All right, can you guys hear me? Can you hear me in the back? All right, cool. Tones can be heard everywhere. All right. So, welcome to the Mythology of My Little Pony. This is a lecture series presented by me, the Brony Critic. It's also the last presentation that I needed to do to justify being a community guest. I'm about to get in for free. So, the goals of this lecture. When I came up with it, I wanted to be able to examine the cultural, historical, and thematic origins of various creatures, characters, locations, objects, and events of the My Little Pony universe. And so that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to examine not only the human history and mythology, but also the internal mythology of the My Little Pony brand and G4 universe. It's my hope that It's my hope that by examining the cultural and historical origins behind the various aspects of My Little Pony, that we as viewers and critics might become more informed about the relationship between ourselves and the messages the show hopes to imbue within us. So the first thing we're going to focus on is the history of My Little Pony, and this is the history of the brand My Little Pony. So My Little Pony started in 1981 by Bonnie Zachary under the name of My Pretty Pony. She was inspired to create My Little Pony out of her desire as a little girl to own her own horses. The original run of the toy series were based on realistic horses, but soon changed to the more childlike and mythological with the introduction of Pegasi and unicorns into the lineup. Now, Hasbro acquired the rights and in 1986 worked with Sunbow Productions to create several TV shows based on Hasbro products. This is what we got with Generation 1, My Little Pony and Friends, from 1984 to 1987. So it originally ran from April 14th of 84 until September 23rd of 87. My Little Pony was included among the original lineup of Hasbro shows including G.I. Joe and Transformers. G.I. Joe, Real American Hero, there's my childhood right there. So it first ran with a TV movie, the My Little Pony, the movie, followed shortly after by Escape from Katrina. It was much more fantasy and adventure based than its successors. My Little Pony introduced many concepts and characters now present in G4. Yep. Generation 1 was the introduction of many of the characters, like Applejack and Spike, who made their transition from G1 to G4 with relatively little change to their overall character, whilst ponies like Surprise, Firefly, Moondancer, Sparkler, and Posy eventually evolved into Pinkie Pie, Rainbow Dash, Twilight Sparkle, Rarity, and Fluttershy, respectively.
Moondancer appeared in season 5 and Surprise is a wonderful team, so they kind of made it in there.
Right, but I get that they definitely did show up, but their original characters were kind of the inspirations for the original characters. All right, now we're going to be, let's see. Oh, yeah, okay, here we go. Now, the fantasy and adventure aspects of Generation 1 would actually go a long way to inspiring the general feel of Friendship is Magic. As well as, of course, probably the most obvious correlation would be the elements of harmony, which are clearly supposed to be inspired by the Rainbow of Light from Generation 1, which was basically an artifact that the human character of Megan would use to beat back evil forces, or sometimes flutter ones. All right. Many of the villains of G1 actually have their origin, or many of the villains of G4 have their origins in G1, including the Schmooze, which really isn't that much of a villain in G4, but it was clearly made as a nod. It's made as a wink towards anyone who knows the show. You have T-Rex and actually Nightmare Moon, because her eternal night plan was actually taken directly from T-Rex Escape from Midnight Castle. After G1, we had Generation 2, which is the My Little Pony Tales, 1992 to 1999. Now, After the Generation 1 ended, it was quickly replaced. Like almost immediately after it came out, it was replaced by the G2 series. Generation 2 saw the creation of a new TV show, My Little Pony Tales, but that only ran from August 2nd to December 25th of 1992. It was much more slice of life, and the ponies behaved much more like teenage human girls than actual ponies. And because of that, it was actually much less successful, as clearly indicated by the fact that the show only lasted until 92, and the toy run ended in 1999, and wouldn't be brought back again until Generation 3. I heard that. Somebody just did a gigantic audible hush. Yeah, reputation precedes it. All right. So, with elements of Generation 2, despite its general unpopularity, G2 did actually have some influences upon the world of G4. Many of the slice of life elements from G4 come directly from G2, though they're much more balanced to align with the whole adventure style of the show. Also, something that's kind of interesting is that the character of Starlight Glimmer sees her origins in G2. That one of the characters from G2, Starlight, made her appearance there. So there's clearly some indication between that character and the one we eventually got in G4. Also, Bon Bon. Many other background characters do kind of tend to show up through G2. This kind of with the start of some of the other names. After G2, however, we got into G3 and 3.5, which you can't qualify them as a TV show. You just call them the My Little Pony shorts and movies, which ran from about 2003 to about 2009 when they were saved.
I had to grow up on G3 when I was a little girl.
Yeah, that's the kind I was familiar with, and that's actually what kept me from getting into the show for quite a long while. It's
like kind of the reason I kind of went off. But when I heard off of G4, I was like, oh no, this is going to be like one of the little girl shows. But then I saw Return of Harmony. I was like,
yeah, I mean, that's clear. I think that might actually, and I'm going to get into that a little bit, that maybe it being bad was a good thing. I'll get into that. Following the discontinuation of G2 in '99, there was actually quite a few years in between the toy lineups. I guess they kind of wanted to focus on some new things. And eventually in 2003, they started G3. This generation is basically divided up into the early 2000s with the mini shorts, and then 3.5, which we could really call Flash era pony. Mostly animations, the cheap animations made with Flash. This generation is infamous for its low quality animation and child-oriented focus. The movies and shorts were basically released erratically between the years of 03 and 09, and they're about as bad as you could imagine. Some of them include A Very Minty Christmas, A Princess Promenade, Crystal Princess, The Runaway Rainbow, A Very Pony Place, and Twinkle Wish Adventure.
So what about I remember briefly about the Baby Pony Adventure, something like that.
That would be that's Twinkle Wish Adventure.
That introduced you to Lou, didn't it?
I'll get into that in just a bit. So if you guys could please leave your questions and comments till after the show, or after the presentation, we'll have plenty of time. All right, so however much we bronies might like to deny it, G3 and 3.5 had an enormous impact on G4. As you were saying, the Cutie Mark Crusaders actually have their origins through G3, the introduction of characters like Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle, as well as Cheerilee showing up here. Also, Rainbow Dash officially as a character comes from G3, though her personality is derived much more from G1's Firefly. G4 Rarity was given some of G3 Rainbow's qualities, although it was definitely toned down. The Princess Promenade shares many similarities and actually might have been the influence for the ascension of Twilight Sparkle at the conclusion of Season 3, since it's all about someone being elevated, or a pony being elevated to princesshood, and then having to deal with, are you ready to deal with that kind of maturity sort of thing? So, that general plotline probably came from the Princess Promenade. The Crystal Princess probably inspired the creation of Cadence and the Crystal Empire. Although that also has some references to G1 as well, in that there are the, I can't remember, the six princesses that go around, all trying to save. They're beating back the giant crystal Levon villain guy. Yeah, I can't, for the life of me, I can't recall his name. Anyway. Okay. And of course, my argument is that maybe the negative reactions to Generation 3 and 3.5 motivated Hasbro to revamp their entire brand, which put their trust in Lauren Faust, leading directly into G4. So maybe the fact that G3 and 3.5 were so bad is the reason we got My Little Pony Friendship is Magic at all. And of course, we have the current generation, 2010 to current. Following the negative reactions, Lauren Faust took many of her childhood MLP stories and combined them with aspects from all previous generations to create Friendship is Magic, which premiered alongside Hasbro shows on their new Hub network on October 10th, 2010. Actually, when it first came out, My Little Pony was considered okay. It wasn't great, but it was okay. It was better than the previous stuff, that was certain. But continued discussions on forums and online web pages eventually helped to develop them into a really loyal and enthusiastic fan base, the Bronies. Oh, come on, you guys can do better than that.
Huzzah!
Alright, so, because of us, the Bronies, My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, is currently Hasbro's most popular TV show and toy line. Yet we outsell everything else. And that's brought us up to the present as far as the brand is concerned. But what about the world in and of itself? Now, this is going to be a bit more headcanon-y, just a bit. I'm going to give you guys the mythological elements where they come from, but also kind of give my events for the timeline at which things occur. Now, I need to let you guys know about what I consider to be canon, because it's going to be important for why I consider things the way they are. Canon is the TV show, obviously, and the Journal of the Two Sisters, because that is supposed to be that's supposed to be the book that they read in the episode Castlemania brought into the real world. That is supposed to be the book that they have in show, so it becomes an extension of the show. The other books, I'm not really 100% certain on their canonicity until I get to fully read them. I'm not going to be willing to make those kind of guesstimates. And as much as I love the comics and would love their really epic storylines to be included, they're not. They're an alternative universe. Alright. So, the first thing that we know, the earliest known events that we can conjecture to have occurred in the universe are those that require, or that are described in the adventures of Daring Do, the Tenochtitlan Basin. Now, since we discover in Daring Don't that all of Daring Do's adventures are based on real adventures, everything Twilight and Rainbow discuss could technically be considered historically existent, each giving potential questions regarding the ancient history of MLP. And the reason I say that they're more than likely existent is the fact that Twilight and Rainbow could just in a regular conversation follow the plot line of what was actually going in Daring Do's own adventure in that episode, like describing the basin of Tenochtitlan, the rings of Scorchero, the radiant shield of Razdon, the Quetzalcoatl Empress. The fact that they could follow those details enough to actually lead to where Darington was seems to indicate that those events really did happen. There might be some modifications, but they do seem to be historically significant. And they bring up a lot of interesting questions. For example, the basin of Tenochtitlan. Maybe it's a Mesoamerican-inspired pony civilization. You know, the rings of Scorchero. Who and what is Scorchero? The radiant shield of Razdon. Who or what is Razdon, and why was the shield necessary? And now this is weird because this is the spelling I got when I took the official transcription, but that's clearly pronounced as the Quetzalcoatl. It's supposed to be Quetzalcoatl Empress. Quetzalcoatl Empress. Thank you.
I think it's supposed to be spelled with a Q.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. But this is what I got from the transcription on MLP, the MLP wiki.
Yeah.
I mean, that might not be true, just advanced translation.
Possibly.
Yeah, I've seen it differently. I
Yeah.
have like spelled in my thing differently.
You're right. That's what's really weird. But
I have a theory for the rings of Scorchero.
I'm actually going to get into some of my theories, but I will definitely call on you first when you get to the end. All right. So, as far as my theory, I'm under the idea that the Quetzalcoatl Empress might have actually been associated with possibly an ancient dragon empire. And my reason for this is the fact that the Quetzalcoatl is an ancient Mesoamerican feathered serpent god, and actually shares many similarities with the concept of what we would know as dragons. The interesting thing about it is that clearly the Tenochtitlan Basin is based off of it's clearly based off of Mesoamerican, Aztec, and Mayan culture. So I'm thinking that they might be having references to Aztec and Mayan deities and gods. Now, why do I think some of these? Because oh, wait a minute, did I skip over? Yep, then I went back, okay. Yeah, I messed up some panels. So, we get references to radiance and fire with the shield of Razdon and the rings of Scorchero, which lend further evidence to that theory, because the only dragons we've ever seen in My Little Pony are fire dragons. However, we also, wait a minute, what the? Whatever. All right. So, of course, the name Tenochtitlan is actually based on the ancient capital of the Aztec Empire. Today it's known as Mexico City. And, it practiced human sacrifice and the worship of the sun, which I'm wondering might be a reference, the bloodstone scepter. We have no idea where that comes from, but clearly it has an indication it forces dragons to do what they want. And bloodstone seems to have some indication towards, violence or controlling therein. Of course, there's also another possibility that they might actually be a reference to the Draconic, like Discord and his race, because we never see any more of his. We don't see any more of his kind, and the feathered or the semi-draconic creature that a Quetzalcoatl is seems to maybe imply that, and that would certainly be interesting as like an ancient Draconicus empire. Of course, after the Tenochtitlan Basin, we get Hearth-Swarming Eve. This event, we know that this had to have occurred because of the Journal of the Two Sisters. It had to occur just shortly before their ascension. So it would have, the Tenochtitlan Basin has to be thousands of years old. Because it's clearly abandoned, it's supposed to be ancient, no one can read the ruins. So I'm thinking it probably might have taken a few millennia before the events of Hearth-Swarming Eve. So obviously this was meant to be the equestrian equivalent to Christmas, and information coming from the Hearthswarming Eve episode, Hearthbreakers, Twilight Sparkle Teacher for a Day, and Journal of the Two Sisters. We know that Star Swirl Bearded was alive at this time, as Clover the Clever was described as being his apprentice. And we also see the implications of pony civilizations existing long before Equestria, with the unicorn kingdoms of King Bullion and Pegasopolis. So my kind of theories on the mythological and historical inspirations behind these pre-unification kingdoms. Because they all kind of tie themselves at least a little bit to ancient Earth nations. The Pegasi are very much inspired by the militaristic attitudes of the Romans and the Spartans, the implications based on their manner of wardrobe and all of that. You know, we get the unicorns are clearly supposed to be based off of almost like the petty kings of the Dark Ages, you know, where Luna and Celestia would be sort of the Renaissance, the revitalized leaders, you know, new empires, new ruling, and then you get these petty kings in the Dark Ages that just kind of rule over short little swaths of land that they kind of run their serfs and vassals from. And you know, those are fairly easy to kind of place based on how they read themselves. Earth ponies are actually a little bit more difficult, but the fact that they have, you know, a chancellor seems to imply that they might be more democratic at the very least. So they might actually draw inspiration from Athens, or I came up with the idea of maybe the burgermeisters of Middle Ages Germany, because many of the city-states in Germany would be run by basically an elected mayor that had basically absolute authority. And so I'm thinking that might be the references for Chancellor Puddinghead. You know, so we have the pre-unification kingdoms, but there's also another mythological element that exists within Hearthswarming Eve. Wendigo.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Is that
Gollum?
No, that's Until Dawn.
That's, yes. Oh, there you go.
That terrifying thing.
The Wendigos of Friendship or Magic are treated as some of the most destructive and dangerous creatures in the entire world, being nearly responsible for the absolute destruction of pony kind. They feed on hatred like an anti-changeling. But, despite that, the original creatures, Wendigos, are even more frightening, as anyone who's ever played Until Dawn can attest to. Wendigos are creatures from Algonquin legend, basically early Paleo-American myths and legends. They were the result of humans who engaged in the practice of cannibalism and had their bodies possessed by evil spirits. They also actually represent a really strange cultural phenomenon where people can actually be driven to behave like Wendigos, cannibalism and all, where people who believe in Wendigos, when they're like lost in the woods and desperate and hungry, will actually start to behave and transform into them. There are real historical and medical cases of this occurring. I think it's like called a Wendigo syndrome.
Josh. Josh. In the end of the game.
Right, Josh from Until Dawn. The funny thing is that that's based on an actual psychological condition. So, we've got the Wendigos. You guys have your nightmares for the evening. We're going to be going to the coronation of Celestia and Luna. So, we have, following the founding of Equestria, the Journal of the Two Sisters tells us that Celestia and Luna were crowned. They were crowned because their Alicorn heritage would preserve the peace started by the fire of friendship. No one else in Equestria could trust anyone else, so they picked two ponies that were literally everything, which tells us that they were actually born Alicorns. Which is, I find rather interesting because, with the introduction of Flurry Hearts, that's the third born Alicorn we know of. Yep.
What about the whole thing about them saying, like,
Equestria has never seen the birth of an Alicorn? Do you think that's
Well,
just
because
Equestria.
Equestria isn't the name of the planet, it's the name of the
Yeah.
country.
Well, yeah, that could be one thing, but it might also be that they've never seen another alicorn, implying that they did not know they don't know where they come from, because they were clearly very young. In Journal of Two Sisters, they don't even have their cutie marks when they're ascended to the crown. They don't get that until the end. Spoilers. So this, again, had to occur shortly after the unification because all of the original players from Heartswarming Eve are present. Princess Platinum, Clover the Clever, Star Swirl, Pudding Head, all of them are there, so clearly they have to, this had to have occurred maybe within a few months, maybe even within a year of the unification. So we know that their reign was very tumultuous and difficult until the acquisition of their cutie marks for raising and lowering the sun. And we also get the implications in this that Star Swirl is working on a time travel spell, allowing for the possibility of his interference throughout equestrian history, including the present. Star Swirl for the movie. Actually, that's one of the interesting ideas is that the actor who plays Sabretooth he's going to be starring in the My Little Pony movie. So there's theories that maybe he's Grogar, there's theories that maybe he's Star Swirl. Either would be fine by me as long as he shows up.
Sabretooth from X-Men.
Sabretooth from X-Men, yep.
Could you move your mic a little closer to yourself and it'd be a little easier to hear in the back?
Yeah, sorry about that. That better?
Perfect.
Cool. Not too loud in the front, is it?
No.
All right. All right. So, when you look at the elements and inspirations for Celestia and Luna, we do see a lot of ties to Arthurian legend, and that's obviously Star Swirl is supposed to be based off of Merlin, which is a old Welsh Arthurian legend. The original character was Merlin Ambrosius, and basically he was the daughter of a human and a succubus, but they kind of switched that around. Sometimes him being a fairy. He's basically half demon. That's why he can do magic. That's actually the influence of Christian mythology, in that anyone with magic was clearly demon spawn. Alright, so we get, of course, the connections with, they both are very mysterious in their origins, exceedingly eccentric, incomparably wise, and they're often responsible for ending a period of great political upheaval. After Heartswarming, Equestria is going to be unified. How long? Well, now with the Alicorns there, which was Star Swirl's doing, now 1,000 years and it's still going strong.
At least 1,000 years.
At least 1,000 years, possibly longer.
Definitely longer.
And of course, even Celestia and Luna's ascension to the throne shows many references to the rise of King Arthur. Both Luna and Celestia were born to greatness, yet were from apparently humble origins. They don't talk about their families very much, implying that they don't know them. They're untested in the field of leadership, and they seek counsel from a wise sage, Star Swirl. They're challenged early on from formerly independent vassals and petty kings, and the two rise to form a great time of peace. Oh, hi.
Paying attention.
All right, cool.
Ignore me.
Will do. All right. That peace is later undone by an internal feud and misunderstanding, leading to a period of despair and uncertainty, though the promise of the rightful order being restored keeps hope alive. And we also get the implication of Star Swirl beginning his travels through time during the Griffinstone incident is quite similar to the immortality of Merlin, who, according to Arthurian legend and the hopefulness of Anglo-Saxon and Welsh culture, they're all hoping for the once and future king to return to claim his rightful throne. Okay, how many fans of Merlin in the audience? The old sci-fi show. In the back. Yay. That's where I got the picture from. Whatever. Alright, so the next event that I think occurred, and again, this is mostly headcanon, but I'm taking it from clues I can kind of gather from the different source materials. I think the first big event after they get their cutie marks is the war with the Crystal Empire. The reason is that, you know, it's of course incredibly vague, and the only three events we really get between the Lunar Rebellion are the Age of Chaos, the Tyrrhic Crisis, and the war with the Crystal Empire. Now, the lack of elements, of harmony while Celestia and Luna discuss the battle with Sombra implies that they probably weren't in play at this point. And when I give explanations for why Age of Chaos and Tyrrhic have to take place where they do, it kind of delegated this to where it is. They don't imply the elements of harmony. They apparently it didn't occur to anyone in the Crystal Empire episode to maybe bring the elements of harmony along because they were still around, indicating that maybe they didn't have an effect, or maybe the heart is the only thing that has an effect. Now, okay, yep. Since it's actually rather interesting that Celestia and Luna don't have the elements of harmony at this point, because in the Journal of the Two Sisters, they know about the Tree of Harmony. In fact, that's why they build their castle where they build it. It's because it's right over the Tree of Harmony. So they clearly know about the tree, but they don't have the elements yet. They only get those with Discord. So, and of course, immediately after that, we get a few instances. We get references to Princess Amore, who's said to rule over the Crystal Empire. Therefore, Sombra probably usurped the throne from Amore shortly after Celestia and Luna received their cutie marks. Now, anyone who's familiar with the Sombra backstory comic will know that Princess Amore shows up there as well, but they also include it in the Journal of the Two Sisters, which is why I think they do kind of push it more into the canon territory. Because it's just a good plot line. And also leaves the possibility of him returning. Alright, so, King Sombra, what are his mythological hints? Yes, the Dark Lord, Sauron, and the Crystal Empire. The connections between Sauron and Sombra are very clearly evident. Beyond direct confirmation from show creators regarding the connection, we see it in their shared images and motifs, as well as the way their villainy is presented to the audience, although Sombra's was unfortunately kind of botched. In Lord of the Rings, Sauron is treated as a great manipulator. His very presence inspires fear in his enemies. He doesn't need to face his opponents to make them terrified. However, and this is the biggest problem in what I'll talk about what I would have done to fix the Crystal Empire storyline. Sauron possesses the Orcs, a military force that can enact his will. Yeah, he's frightening and terrifying, and nobody actually faces him in open combat. But he's got the Orcs to do it for him. So there's a constant present threat to the good guys throughout the adventure. It's actually, ironically, in the alternative universe presented in the season 5 finale, Sombra gets his own thrall army. He turns the crystal ponies into mindless soldiers of his will. And isn't it ironic that at that point is when he becomes a massive threat? If they had done that in the original, even in the comics, they imply that that's what he's working towards. But they needed something like that desperately in the show. And he never shows of course, a direct manipulative streak in the show, but there is implications that he overthrew Princess Amore, which would seem to imply some kind of guile and cunning. So he could have been manipulative. We just don't know that much about his character, because they didn't give any to him. What the heck is going on? I'm so sorry, guys. What's wrong?
Try to turn the other microphone off.
It's off. Don't know what's going on. Whoa.
Okay, turn that microphone off and turn it back on.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
let me see
yeah.
what.
There.
If that happens again, just do that real quick and it'll turn off. It'll kill the feedback.
It was somber.
Yeah.
He's on to you.
He didn't like your
Cross the wires here.
Don't cross the stream.
It was that hateful star from New Horizons. From Project Horizons.
What?
Project Horizons.
Sorry.
No,
Don't
no,
understand.
no,
Fallout
Can
Equestria.
you guys hear me?
want to do
Yeah.
it. Yeah, reading a
Is it better?
8.8 million word story.
Am I
I
screaming
do
at
want to
you?
read it.
No.
It's intimidating.
Too bad. Alright. So, where was that? Alright. Now, what I would have done, what I would have loved to have done for the Crystal Empire episode, you know how Shining Armor, when he faces up against Sombra, he gets those crystals in his head? I would have loved to have seen him being manipulated and controlled by Sombra to attack Twilight Men. So inside the city, there would have been an agent enacting his will. So he was actually, instead of being the dude out on the, like the dude outside in the backyard screaming at you, he would actually been in your yard messing with your stuff. You know, but we got what we got, and who knows, he could always come back.
Stay tuned.
Yep, and if we move into the next, the Age of Chaos is probably what happened next. You know,